Well, welcome. Tonight we bring together two candidates for the 3-year Selectman's race. We want to be really clear because it's been confusing to people. The school committee races, when 3 or 4 people run, the top 2 get it. There are 2 separate races, 3-year post, 2-year post. So don't pick 2 from either category because that won't work. Okay, they should be listed separately, clearly enough, but let's make sure everybody understands when you go out on April 4th and vote. That's the most important thing. So tonight, if you've had a chance to skim through either some of the shows that we've had on the 2 candidates individually, or if you go to that Milford Show channel on YouTube, you can see their individuals. Tonight we're bringing them together to talk about the same questions. So why don't we start with an introduction?
I'm Bill Buckley. I'm chairman of the Milford Board of Selectmen. I've been doing that for now my 4th term. Prior to that, I was on the Milford School Committee, and prior to that, I was on various councils and coached youth sports. Professionally, I work at Bose. I am a global supply chain engineer there, and I've been working in various phases of medical device quality, commercial quality, whether it be supply chain or just quality management.
Thank you, Al. Thank you for having us tonight. My name is John Erickson, currently Building Commissioner for the town of Milford and School Committee member. Along with being Building Commissioner, I own a small business in town, Erickson Electric. We've been in business since my father started the business in the 60s. Lifelong Milford resident, and just here to say hello and contribute.
By selection, you picked the right number, so you get the first question, no surprise, because both of you have been on the show enough to know. We start and finish with, Bill, I'm from Milford, why should I vote for you?
That's a great question. It's one that I like to repeat as I'm working with, knocking on doors or talking with residents locally. It's generally, it's based on experience, I think, and some of the experience that I've had in working with either congressional delegation on EPA issues, working with various boards and committees to get us Milford to the point it is financially and the shape it's in now. And I think people know me. I think people know and understand what drives me, the types of decisions I make. Generally, I think they'll think I'm data-driven and more process-oriented, but I work hard at what I do.
Has nothing to do with your quality background, right?
A little bit of quality, a little bit of medical, but yeah, and I think people, with regard to needing to know, I think in a small community, needing to know the family, having come through the ranks from school committee to board of selectmen and various long-range planning committees, building school committee, and a variety of different things, come to know and understand a lot of the Milford issues, where the challenges are, what things we need to get better at, and I think that's part of what I bring to the board and what I bring to the residents this April.
That's an interesting comment. When you look at the Board of Selectmen, this could be the first time that 3 selectmen in memory all came from the school committee first.
No, actually Dino did, Brian did, Sal was on the board.
But didn't you always have one member that wasn't? Well, no, when Brian and Dino were
the last one I can recall was probably John Seaver that had not served on the school committee.
Because, again, here we go. Another school committee member stepping up. John, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Well, Al, I think you need to know my background, which I briefly introduced you to as a lifelong resident, small business owner, taxpayer. But it's my combination of that side of things, but my municipal experience. As you know, I've been 14 years with the town of Milford, 8 part-time, 6 plus full-time, and you get a different perspective working in town government, working at the town hall every day, and seeing what the true needs are. And it's a perspective that I don't think you can get from the outside, in part. Certainly not on every topic, but that, and then with my elected experience on the school committee, it's only been 2 years, but if you look at what we've done on the school committee in 2 years, it's certainly been 1 or 2 terms worth of accomplishments. We've worked hard as a committee collectively, collaboratively, and I think we've really moved the district forward. So I think I have a record of good decision-making, good listening, recognizing problems, addressing them in collaboration with others. And that's why I think, you know, I have a lot to offer to the town of Milford as selectman.
I have to keep track, make sure I ask the questions in the right order. So if you see me moving my cup, that's my tell. You get the next question. 3 biggest challenges in your mind that the town of Milford faces.
I think without doubt, the stormwater management is the biggest challenge that we have right now. I mean, that's projected to be a 20-year project, rounding off to $43, $45 million. And the infrastructure that needs to be put in place to handle that permitting, the financing that needs to be put in place, you know, to pay for those improvements that need to be made, is, I think, our biggest challenge and problem. I think that the what to do with Middle School East is certainly up there. That may be a very short-term problem, depending on how short-term issue, depending on how it unfolds. It may not be. It may be ours for the duration. And again, it depends on what the community wants to do with that facility. I think school improvement projects are big, and you know, the rest of the capital items. I don't know how far down you want to drive into this. You know, the possibility of GIS implementation as part of the infrastructure. Godfrey Brook still has more improvements to be made. Certainly, a lot of work's been done, but a lot of work still needs to be done as we move downstream. So I think those are, you know, the short list of our biggest issues.
Then we'll get into some of those specifically as we go. Bill, 3 biggest projects that you can see the town getting into.
Well, I like to look at it and say the 3 biggest challenges, because not all of them are capital projects. Certainly acquisition of water company at $63 million is likely to be something significant on the voters' minds as in the next year. As you know, we're in the phase of doing due diligence and understanding what all the risks and liabilities are associated with that. And for anybody who doesn't understand the due diligence process for acquisition, it means that we really peel the onion to understand not only from the books, from the operations, from the engineering standpoint, where are the potential risks, make sure we understand them, so that if the Board of Selectmen moves forward with this acquisition process, taking it to town meeting, that we're not coming back to them and saying, hey, we missed something, and 2 years later saying that we need another $5 million. So part of that understanding that risk is doing that type of work. I've been doing that in the negotiations for the last couple of years, and it's been going well. It's slow right now because that due diligence process can be tedious.
And I'll ask you later on specifically of the water company.
Yeah.
And give you time to go through that.
The water company, certainly opioid crisis. I mean, we're seeing opioids destroy families and destroy homes is another challenge, not in any particular order. I think the stormwater management is a key aspect. It's been estimated to be upwards of $100 million in terms of its cost. I've seen it go from 45 to 100 and bounce in between. I think it's going to have a far more devastating impact. You know, we look at the 100 million, or we look at whatever that number is in between, and say, here's the impact. The impact is not just there. The impact is going to be to our small businesses. They're the ones that are going to be paying the freight. And the question is, how many of them can survive in an economy that taxes rainwater and taxes roofs and parking area? Because that's really what this EPA mandate is about.
Okay, next question. A lot of emotion surrounds the word immigration.
Mm-hmm.
Your comments?
Yeah, immigration is largely a federal issue. It's not something that that at the local level we have responsibility for enforcing. You can talk to the chief and become very clear on that. But aside from that, we deal and manage with some of the immigration challenges and some of the aspects of immigration because of our large housing stock and the number of apartments we have available. That's why, you know, I've been aggressive at making sure that we're resourced, making sure that the task force stays on task, making sure that we keep doing it. There's periods there where it stalled and wasn't happening, and you know, so that was one of the things that made sure. And Dino was another one. You know, I can remember the meeting where we made sure that it was clear that that was a very high priority in making sure that buildings didn't become overcrowded. We know some of the challenges associated with illegal boarding facilities. And that task force is our biggest tool into making sure that the quality of life in neighborhoods isn't altered so dramatically. And some of that is because in some ways, some of the illegal immigrants and undocumented or illegal in any case have been challenged to live in very small areas where even landlords are taking advantage of them. Landlords and sometimes people of their home background, their home country. So that's been a particular impact. That and the illegal driving. As you know, we've had 3 deaths in Milford with people that were driving unlicensed, uninsured, and that's had a devastating impact on families. I know one of them avoided justice by going back to their own country, and so that's some of the aspects we deal with. But we are working in cooperation with ICE. Milford, when I was on the board as a member voting for working cooperation with ICE, making sure that employers had their appropriate documentation so that they weren't out creating a criminal enterprise, hiring a lot of illegal people who are not authorized to work. In addition, I think Tom O'Loughlin, our police chief, works closely with the immigrant population and the churches to make sure that people feel comfortable in reporting crimes. And our cooperation with the federal government, ICE specifically, Immigration and Customs, where we have an agreement that we will work with them where a detainer is issued, and where it's lawful, we'll hold them for the federal government to pick them up. Because one of the challenges most certainly is even from the immigrant population, they're the ones reporting in a lot of cases that these people are here. These people have committed crimes in other countries or are committing crimes here. And the immigrant population doesn't want them either, frankly.
They're the ones that suffer the most.
They are suffering the most. So I think we've got good cooperation with our immigrant population. And Tom, through the police department, fire department, board of health, I think those departments work closely so that there's cooperation and a feeling that you can talk to somebody.
John, immigration.
Yeah, again, I agree with Bill. It starts on the federal level. But on the local level, what we have to do is try and manage the effects of it. We've talked about this. One of the bigger effects is the number of ELL students in the school system, which has gone up by approximately 100 students in the last 2 years. In the housing, being part of the task force, it's something I've been experiencing for 5 years, the overcrowding. The overcrowding issue is really regulated by the Board of Health. Although we work together as a task force, the Board of Health actually deputized me as a health inspector to enforce that, which I have been. And it's one of those situations. The rents in Milford, I don't know who's in tune with it, but they're very high right now. 2- and 3-bedroom apartments are as much as many people are paying for a mortgage on an entire house. And what's hard to quantify is cause and effect. Is it some of the overcrowding that drove up the price of rental houses because they were willing to pay it, or is that the rental market's so strong that these workers can't afford to live unless they're putting more than one family in a house. But we have been managing those effects very well. The Board of Health has Article 37. They do those registrations every year. They do inspections every year. And we as the task force do housing inspections every year, not just for overcrowding, but for illegal units, for unsafe conditions, and things of that nature. So, we are very much in tune with it, but it is a challenge that's not subsiding. It's there daily. And because it's a dynamic situation, right? We can resolve a problem today, and it can come back tomorrow or in a month. So it's.
Well, I don't think people understand we can't deport people to Rhode Island. It's not, even though we're the center of the universe, it's not a Milford policy that's followed. Only the federal government can really deal with immigration policies.
Right, and frankly, Milford was made up of immigrants. So I think the nature of your question is, are you talking about immigrants who, when you look through the history of Milford, immigrants have made a tremendous contribution to our community, whether they be Italian, Irish, Portuguese,
Brazilian, Ecuadorian, Guatemalan.
And I think what we've just honed in on is more of the illegal immigration and the secondary and third level effects of that.
Yeah, because I mean, realistically, I don't know any of us who would be here.
Right.
You know, if somebody hadn't helped my grandfather, who showed up from Portugal with $32.80 in his pocket, we'd still be on a farm back in the hills.
Which is life's savings, right? Back then.
And I can vouch for that as well. My two in-laws, as you know, are straight from Italy.
Profanity. When or how would you feel about the words 2.5 override and debt exclusion?
Well, as you say, profanity. 2.5 override, short of a catastrophic economic problem within the entire country, I don't think I could ever support that. That's never been the position that Milford has taken, and we're so far under the levy limit now that I can't see us ever needing to do a 2.5 override. Debt exclusion, I feel basically the same way, although we've talked again in the past that if you're ever going to undertake a big project, your only chance at voting for a debt exclusion is at the beginning, and you could make that vote and just choose never to exercise that option. So it's something that could make financial sense, but we are in such good financial shape, I don't see a need for it in the near future for any projects in Milford.
Bill, those words.
Both are dead on arrival when they hit my desk. I don't want to make sure I'm not ambiguous about my response. And
yeah, how do you really feel about that?
No, for 12 years, I've been a part of Board of Selectmen and working with a variety of people from the FinCom who had trouble with not raising taxes to the maximum 2.5%. People talk in code, we talk levy capacity, but it's really raising to the 2.5 levy, 2.5 ceiling. I was always a strong opponent of doing that. I didn't think it was necessary, and I know that there were members of the FinCom and others, even members of the Board of Selectmen at the time, who talked about we were leaving money on the table. That's never been my position. I think we're going into this next budget some $3 million under the levy capacity as the intended target. So we're looking good in terms of managing our finances. We've been doing that. We've been doing a great job over a number of years, having returned $10 million to the taxpayer. There isn't a scenario that you could put forward. And even a catastrophic event. Let's talk about a tornado, a blizzard that, a building collapsed. We have catastrophic insurance where the premium is set such that the first $1 million, $2 million is on us. The rest is covered from insurance. So we've even hedged our bets against catastrophic type events. And I think that's just good, sound policy. I think we're set up in a way to make sure that even when we funded Brookside School at $61 million, we did it and we spaced it in such a way through good government, through cooperative government, through collaboration, that we made sure that we didn't have to impact our operating budget, number one, and number two, debt overrides and exclusions were off the table.
And you think about it, because 10 years ago we started saying, there's a school coming.
Right.
We started looking at Woodland, and now all of a sudden we're also looking at, there's a school coming in 10 years for the high school. That's just good planning, in my mind.
Yeah, I don't know that a school is necessary at the high school. I
Well, but
that thinking,
renovation.
Yeah, some renovation. Maybe it's time, right? Because we've done, over the time that I've been a member of the board, we've done Brookside Memorial.
Now Woodland.
Yeah, Woodland. Woodland was a building that had to come down and a new one had to go up. Being on the Long Range Planning Committee and working with, then co-chairing with now retired state rep, I don't know if he wants to use that word, but the former state representative, John Fernandez, we co-chaired that when we both weren't in elected office. The school committee chartered us to get a group of concerned citizens together, educators together, people from councils, and decide what it is that our grade configuration should be and what that long-range plan should be. That took us, I would say that took us at least 6 months to put together. And it took a lot of thought and it took a lot of collaboration. Ultimately, we voted unanimously to make sure that, number one, 5th grade was back in elementary school where it belonged, so that kids weren't robbed of their elementary school. We were asking kids to grow up a little too fast. And that island of 8th grade, which was hard to sustain at Middle School East, because of the issue and challenges with parking. You know, not just parking, but the building itself created such a challenge that we thought the traditional 6, 7, 8 made more sense as a middle school.
Bill brings up long-range plan. I know we've talked. Your comments?
We have. The long-range plan that was developed, and Bill was certainly a part of it, that projected enrollment and needs through 2017. You know, we certainly had some delays in completing that plan, but we're certainly at the point, and I've been advocating this for a year or so, to develop a new long-range plan, which we have formed a committee, and we're working forward towards that now. And it's interesting when you speak about the grade configuration, because there's a lot of talk on the table right now of possibly including an 8th and 9th grade academy at the high school level in the future. And that's due to the space, you know, and due in part to a number of dynamics, but in part to the space needs at Stacy School. The high school, as we know, was opened in '73, so it's closing in on 50 years old, and it needs some attention. It needs, you know, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing work, just as a minimum, because those systems are failing. But that, you know, hopefully we can limp along with that until it's part of a, you know, a real school improvement plan from a physical standpoint. And that's the focus at the high school right now. They're looking at adding space, whether it's outwards, upwards, or a combination, moving early childhood possibly out of that building, but somewhere in that complex, maybe a small little satellite campus on that complex. Of course, some people have grand ideas for a beautiful field house, but that's a...
yes.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. But there's a lot of planning that needs to go forward now. The long-range plan, the only component that wasn't completed from that was the Early Childhood Center, which was called to either be renovated if Woodland was built at a different site than Old Woodland. I'm sorry, if it was built at the same site, at the existing site, and if not, Old Woodland would have been renovated to accommodate early childhood. So, you know, the last long-range plan was effectively implemented. It certainly hit a bunch of roadblocks, from town meeting in the early 2000s to some other delays that, you know, it was originally scheduled to be opened 8 years ago, or 8 years earlier than it was, the new Woodland. But I mean, that's what you deal with. When you run into problems, you deal with them, you modify your plan and keep moving forward. And that's what I think we did very well. And I think it's a testament to all the parties involved: the school building committee, the school committee, town meeting members, and all of our residents.
And everybody who developed that plan certainly took their lumps. Guess what? It wasn't perfect, but it did guide us for a decade and a half.
Yeah, and from the time we got town meeting approval to the time we delivered the school as a school building, because I'm on the school building committee as well for Woodland, we were on time and under budget. From the time we sought town meeting approval to the time we delivered on time. And you know, you find another project of that magnitude that was on time and under budget, and I'll get you a medal, because I just haven't heard of one.
Well, but you know, it's just like when I'm saying there's a school coming. I don't know how you could build a new high school anywhere. I don't know where you'd find the space. I don't know that you need it. That high school was built as a bunker.
It was.
You know, when my class was the first one out of there in '74. And I walk through it, and I'm amazed at how well the school has weathered. You know, it's still one heck of a building. Now, we need to do some renovation, and when I say there's a new school coming in 8 or 10 years, I got to believe it's going to cost almost as much as some of the small schools we've built.
Yeah, it may cost as much as the Memorial School, it may cost more, who knows. You know, that's where you work with consultants, work with engineers, and make sure you get the right plans.
Well, we're on to school, so next question, Middle School East.
Middle School East. Yeah, it's about to become surplus in June. We've worked with a committee, we've worked with consultants already to talk about what the potential options are. We've looked at things that range from, you know, training facilities to healthcare, where, you know, assisted living, as a growth industry, where, but I think those needs are being satisfied in the community when we look at Countryside, when we look at Blair, when we look at, you know, the number of beds The one down on 109 is another example of a new one that opened up. So, you know, I don't know that those are viable options, but we'll go back to the drawing board as soon as that becomes surplus, and we'll figure out what it is that the community is going to do. We'll set our
Now,
direction.
I'll ask for your definition, but explain to people when you say surplus, what that means.
What it means is that the Board of Selectmen is responsible for disposition of surplus. So that means if a building goes obsolete as a result of the middle school, the Woodland School being built, that means that that building and that grade configuration is no longer part of our long-range plan. So it goes idle, and then the school department, and it can be the same with something as small as a truck, right? A truck is determined to be surplus because it's old, it's aged, it's reached its useful life. There's no longer a need for it. They've moved on. It doesn't make sense to keep pouring money into it. It's deemed to be surplus. As soon as something's deemed to be surplus, it becomes the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen.
John, your mind, surplus.
Yeah,
what does
surplus.
that get you?
Well, Bill actually summed it up nicely in his last sentence, which the school department declared it surplus, meaning we don't have any further use for it from a school aspect. And we could have done other things with it as a school district. We could have leased it out and kept it in case it fits into our long-range plan at some point in the future, whether that was over a 2 or 3 year window or even a 10 or a 20. I mean, we kept Stacy boarded up for a number of years, and it ended up fitting into the plan. But, you know, we looked long and hard at all the options based on what we had for needs. We didn't try and find a use for that building. We tried to solve our needs, and it didn't fit into any of our needs as a school district. So the school committee has declared it surplus as of June 30th, and then it goes over to the Board of Selectmen. And then it's that board's charge to decide what to do with it. They may find some uses for it, you know, as a town building. They may not find any, and they need to, you know, again, follow the rules on the disposition of a product or a building, and put out an RFP, whether it's for well, it could be for a lease, it could be for a sale. It could be that they decide that in their minds the best thing to do is to knock it down. It would have to go to town meeting for funding for any of those. I would have to go through the procurement process for an RFP to sell or lease. And then I think some of the considerations are, if you're going to sell it, and there's probably the most variables if you're going to sell it, you may not have much control over who buys it and what goes in there. It needs to be an allowable use by a zoning standpoint. But one of my concerns is I would hate to see that building be sold and, you know, not come back on the tax roll, be purchased by a nonprofit entity. And we certainly have plenty of those on
And I
in
think
town
there's
and
some
on Main Street.
confusion about the school committee deems it surplus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the responsibility goes to selectmen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like the school committee isn't going to pay for the upkeep, because they get 62% of our budget. If we spend money on upkeep, that's, you know, if you spend $100 or $100,000 to maintain it, that's $62,000 less dollars school committee has.
Right, and looking for a 6% increase this year. So, you know, yeah, it's a big portion of our budget, the largest part of our personnel.
Now, was that a failed attempt at humor?
No.
6%?
That's the last number that I've heard. So,
Well, that number's actually gone down quite a bit.
I was going to say, that seems
okay.
like a failed attempt at humor when...
that was the first request.
No, it was. You're right.
Yeah.
And but that's your starting point of, you know, what we're looking at to try to implement.
Wow.
I could say I want to be young, thin, and have hair.
Yeah, I want to be a radio talk show.
Right.
They're going to make me
They're
one.
going to make me one. Okay.
So, you know, the surplus piece of it, we can control what goes there. We can, through the RFP process, through the RFQ process, we can make sure, the same way that we got rid of the declared surplus for the fire station, right? That building was renovated. It's now low impact use, occasionally storage of some trailers. But it's, if you notice, the hose tower has been all rebuilt. That building has been taken care of, and it looks better now than how we could have taken care of it. And that's why, you know, as John mentioned, the old Stacy School, when that was boarded up, that became a giant pigeon coop. And so that's something we don't want to do. We don't want to be in the business of boarding up facilities because it's very hard to stop that process. It's much easier to sell or lease or mixed use. It's not something, frankly, I just want to be clear, it's not something I want to see town hall offices go into, because I think you start dividing your staff, you start making it hard for customers to do business with you if they need to see multiple departments. If I were going to be in favor of solving any space issues at town hall, the project I'd be in favor of is bumping out the backside, going out to Court Street, and maybe looking at some acquisition of property on the backside of that property, so that when customers come there, they can do one-stop shopping and don't have to cross the street or go somewhere else to a satellite building and try to find parking or whatever.
Anything else on Middle School East?
Well, no, I'd agree. I'm certainly not in favor of boarding it up. After all consideration, I'm certainly not in favor of putting mixed use there, even town hall or anything else in its current configuration. I do think there is some viability to a town hall annex. I do question whether we could put an addition on our historic building, have it pass and be approved. You know, we couldn't even replace windows. We had to rebuild 100-plus-year-old windows because of the historical restrictions on the property. But, you know, it's something we would work together as a community and find. I mean, there's certainly a shortage of space at the town hall. I live that every day, and so do all my colleagues there. So, you know, we'll find a solution to it. I don't know that East is it. In its current configuration, I've mentioned it before, we could consider a town hall annex there, and it would involve knocking down East. It may be cost prohibitive. You know, I've done some research on a demolition of just that site. It's certainly been discussed, you know, through members of the Finance Committee of, you know, let's build a park there. I've got some, you know, range of numbers. It's anywhere from $1 to $2 million to knock that building down and pave it or grass it or whatever else. So it is a big consideration.
And you get some comments from people who are using that gym back there if you started knocking down the building and the gym. So it has long-reaching tentacles into a lot.
Yeah, right across the street, we just put $5 million into renovating that gym and making it capable of being used by multiple groups. And even at the same time, we're looking at another change and altering there, where maybe dividers are going to be used. So, you know, I think there are lots of options. You know, a gym isn't necessarily a reason to keep that building, but it's certainly, as you said, something that has long-range implications for youth groups that we've got to be mindful of. And
I would just actually agree with that. We don't keep that building strictly for the benefit of the gym.
Milford Bus. We're starting a pilot program. Question goes to you. Comments? Feelings?
Certainly in favor of public transportation, but the question is, you know, the costs, the ridership, how much benefit are we getting to the community? You know, what are we getting for grants and aid? You know, if we're getting the $250,000 based on today's ridership, you know, that's like $20 a rider. If we're down to the 75 that we paid the first year, we're down to, you know, $6 and change per rider, and it's in its infancy. So I think we need to, you know, cultivate that and see how that program grows.
The Milford Bus.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to measure it in terms of a spreadsheet. I don't think its impact on quality of life for individuals. I know I just had a discussion with Jen Walsh, who's got a training program helping out young people who are part of their special needs and disabilities group that she's done phenomenal work with. And she's doing training to make sure that as kids come out of the program, as young adults, no longer serviced by the school building department, have a means and an understanding of how to utilize that service. So it's far-reaching implications across the community to people who are otherwise not able to drive, don't drive, can't drive, or in some communities, public transportation is a tool so they don't have to drive, right? If they can get back and forth to work or to a T station, they're all good. They can own a home, own an apartment. You see young millennials doing this a lot in various communities. You see Franklin, it's happening. You see, you know, Cambridge. There's no reason why, if we can get them to a T station, they can still be, you know, working in the financial district and living in Milford, having the services available that we have.
Okay. Big project coming up, the water company. They promised to get back to it. Now let's go into as many details as we're allowed. Why?
Well, there are a lot of reasons. They start with accountability. There are a lot of reasons why a community might want to look at owning its water company. Back in the early days, the initial charter of the water company always stated that Milford had first right to acquire its own water system. And there was a reason for that. The legislature knew at the time that communities could and may want to own their own water resources. So I think this is a case where if the money is right, if it's revenue neutral, if it's not going to raise rates, because that's the thing that would make it dead on arrival for the board, then there may be an option that we can take to town meeting and say, look, you can own your water rights, you can own it at its current rate structure, and here's its impact financially, here's its impact and for the total package, and here are the risks associated with that. Because I think for a lot of people, dealing with private entities, private companies as it relates to utilities can be arduous at best, right? Getting a call back from, the gas company, the electric company, they behave like utilities. And in some regards, even a small water company will behave like a utility. So the question becomes for town meeting, is this the right thing to do? Do you want the accountability? If you look at a model such as the Sewer Enterprise Fund, for example, well-regulated, well-run, hasn't raised the rates in 9 years, and is maintaining all the infrastructure on the sewer pipes in a responsible way. That's because a lot of people are working very hard for the benefit of the community to make sure the right things are being done, the right maintenance is done. I think the biggest challenge that I hear when I talk to residents and knock on doors is, do we really want to own all that aged water pipe underneath the ground? And the fact of the matter is, we own it anyway. The ratepayers, no matter what happens to those pipes, are always going to pay the freight, always going to pay to repair those water pipes. The water company simply passes those costs through to the ratepayer. So with a little bit of margin,
with some profit on top.
And that profit is the piece that goes away. That's a big piece of where the costs go down, really, and where we can maintain infrastructure. And we would have the same challenge the same way the sewer department would. If some major catastrophic event would happen, they would have to go back and recoup those dollars through the rates, the same way the water company does. The other thing is, I think there's an opportunity for savings in the repair of those, because right now RH White is the construction company that always does the repairs. We're able to go to low bid and supervise the work. It's always going to be somebody else that does major pipe repairs. It's always going to be a construction company that does it. But we're able to go out and pick and choose. We're not beholden to a parent company or a company that is within the family, if you will.
Yeah, they go out and they pick either them and keep the profit, or somebody else and give away the profit.
Yeah, they're always going to.
I haven't seen them give away the profit to somebody else in a long time.
Right. But there are challenges. Right now, this is not packaged in a way that I would be prepared to take it to town meeting. So,
water company.
Water company. I think we could probably spend a full hour, if not a full day, on this discussion. And you guys are both certainly more privileged to some of the information and discussions and negotiations than I am, because that's confidential at this point. But my basic thought is that there's a potential for a small reward, and there's a much bigger risk. Sure, if everything goes right in a perfect world, we will have a better path to compliance, easier compliance, and we'll have lower rates. But the potential for things to go wrong are large. As you just discussed, we own the pipes. We own them today effectively. But if something goes wrong today, small or big, RH White fixes it, or Milford Water Company fixes it, and eventually it comes out in the next rate height, and we end up paying for it. But we have a financial problem if we bought that tomorrow and we need to do a $2 million repair. We don't have it in the enterprise fund yet that would be set up. We'd have to go to town meeting.
Well, that hasn't been established.
Well, I'm making some presumptions.
Yeah.
And
we've
again,
got an enterprise fund considered. So yeah.
Keep going.
But again, there's some immediate financial impacts that aren't present if we don't own it. And then I seriously question the operations and management of that. Are we going to manage it privately? Publicly as a municipality? And I think there's a lot of challenges in establishing that. Are we going to do an appointed board of, are we going to do a board of water commissioners? Are we going to do an appointed board? Are we going to do an elected board? Can we keep personal and political motivations out of establishing all of this? I think there's a lot of pitfalls there. I question the amount. It was published at $63 million. I don't know if that will change. I understand that's through a mediator. You know, I don't know that the company's worth that. That's a price that apparently both parties agreed to. But again, I don't have enough information behind me to embrace that number.
Before we vote on it,
yeah, I don't think anybody has enough information. Well, certainly the general public doesn't have it, right?
Right, and certainly the general public doesn't have it. But I think that information all needs to be laid out. But it's something, whether I support it or not, once we have a full agreement, I want to bring it to the voters to have a vote on it.
Over 63 million, I don't think we have much of a choice.
No, by law you have to.
I was going to say, but law or not law,
yeah, it's the right thing to do.
I can't imagine 3 selectmen standing up saying we're going to spend 63 million and not go to the voters.
But 2 could stand up and kill it.
Ah, okay. We look at town government. We've gone through some pretty radical changes in the last administration, you know, where we went and took some positions from elected to appointed. How do you feel about what we've done, and do you think we have more changes to make?
I like what we've done. I think, you know, the new finance department with the financial director, the treasurer being appointed instead of elected, are all positive steps. I don't like some of the little nuances that have gone within that infrastructure. Frankly, being putting the IT department under the finance director, I think he's got as many responsibilities as he can handle without that to do an effective job. So I think we've done some good changes to the infrastructure, but I think there's some more work to be done.
Do you think anything come out specifically, like you say, we don't want IT under Zach? Where would we put it? I
think it belongs under the town administrator. And, you know, again, I'm seeing the dynamics of the town hall all day, every day. I understand the justification of private industry, and that very often in private industry, that's where the oversight of the IT department comes from, is from the finance.
That's because finance controls the money. You know, when you think of private industry, your CFO is the one that's controlling most of those infrastructure funds. I can't imagine that there's any other reason that it should be under them, but.
But yeah, I again, seeing the day-to-day dynamics, you know, I don't agree with that organization.
Anything else?
Anything else as far as immediate changes?
Or long-term changes?
Nothing specifically off the top of my head. I guess the other things I really don't agree with was even the formation of the IT department. You and I, again, have discussed that before. To form an IT department without taking in public safety under their umbrella doesn't make sense to me. I don't see enough need. I know what we were doing with an outside vendor, taking care of all of our IT needs, and what those costs were. And again, to me, forming that IT department was unnecessary spending of taxpayer money at this juncture.
Okay. Bill?
Yeah, so I was comfortable taking it to town meeting. I was comfortable taking it to the FinCom. The IT infrastructure is important. If you live through the days of most recently payroll not going out and some of the servers going down, software being corrupted, whatever it is, when we start talking about glitches, people are insensitive to not getting their payroll. The other thing is...
yeah, the mortgages usually need to be paid.
You know, it's not like the bill collectors are sensitive to us.
I'm sorry, Town Hall didn't send me my paycheck. Can I not pay my mortgage this month?
So I've lived through some of that, and frankly, through some of the frustrations of some of the employees that were impacted by late or partial payments on payroll. I don't want to live through it again. The other thing that comes huge demand is the importance of HIPAA privacy, where we have responsibility for employees' health records, some of their billings, We have people paying taxes by credit card. We have their credit card information or their bank transaction numbers. And you read every day where corporations are being hacked, governments are being hacked, and private information is being leaked. And if we don't see enough examples of that, I don't know, what we're paying attention to or what newspapers we're reading, but when you see examples of that, they're classic examples of why we don't want to be in that business, and we want to create the right infrastructure to make sure. Now, we think about town hall, it's not just town hall that IT is providing services to the highway department, as you know, providing services to the library, as you know, consulting services and others. So, while using private, we are using a private sector and consulting services. We're just not doing it for everything, right? To outsource 100% of our IT makes no sense at all. And I think we struggled through different organizations. We tried different models, and this has been one that's been more highly successful than any other model, and frankly, I'm comfortable with it. I think if we need to add resources, we'll talk about that. If people are stretched thin, we'll talk about that, but sometimes that's what you need to do in order to get the work done, because you can't always go out and hire.
And John, you brought up a good point, because we wanted to include police and fire, and Chief O'Loughlin and Chief Tui Rev 2 came back and said, guys, this really is too critical. We want 2 or 3 years that you show us stability, then we'll talk to you.
Right.
Agreed. But when you look at police and fire and you look at the certifications, the security credentials that the vendors on that level have, they're far higher than anything that would be needed on the town side. I mean, frankly, I don't know that we could find individuals to have those certifications to work in a 1 or 2 man IT department in the town hall, for what that salary is. When you get a vendor and a contractor that has those certifications and is serving multiple communities, that's when you average down on your costs.
You're right.
And that's legit, because the other thing we looked at is the total spend to maintain that system was a few $1,000s a year. So when you combined in Tom saying, look, let me see 2 or 3 years of really stable, solid IT performance, and I'm only risking a few $1,000s a year of my contract, then I'll talk to you.
Right, that's fair.
And you couldn't argue. The guy's heart's in both of them, both chiefs, their hearts are in the right place, and they're really not asking for a ton of money. Question always comes up, the dynamics of the selectmen. We have 3. Should this board be expanded? Because you get sick, and then there was 2. Just fundamental question. How do you feel? Is 3 the optimum number? It can't be 4, but is 5?
Generally, I would say things don't break when people get sick. If the town administrator's sick, you still run a business. You still run town hall. If the chief of police is sick, you still. So the fact of the matter is, 2 can sustain. You're not sick forever, and if you can't stay in your position, there's vehicles and ways in which you back out and let somebody else get appointed. So I'm not worried about catastrophic illness governing our town. I think that exists across the town. It exists in all businesses. You look at single points of failure and touch points, whether it's where you work or where I work. If you say, if that person leaves, we're in trouble, or if that person gets sick, we're in trouble, everybody figures out a way to pull together and work through it.
John, is 3 the right number?
No, 3 works. It's been working. Bill just pointed out all the reasons that it can work. 5 would be better. 5 would offer you more diversity of opinion, more of a cross-section of the population, different individuals, different experiences, all working together to the common goal. So to me, 5 would be ideal, not 3.
Godfrey Brook, Hospital Brook, O'Brien Brook. A lot of people have commented that the town spends a lot of money fixing parts of the brook that really are privately owned. Any comments on brooks?
Yeah, a few comments on brooks. We've certainly been fixing it and working downstream, and I think that is something we owe to the residents that live in those areas. There's a lot of damaging effects from those brooks. And you know, an additional benefit is the work that we've been doing and will be doing over the next few years will have an impact on our notice of intent and our stormwater management. So I really do think it's been the right thing to do all these years.
Bill, the brooks.
Yeah, so as the years I've been a member of the Board of Selectmen, we've had 2 100-year events. So if that's even possible,
Is that
right?
the West Street that you dragged me out to?
I think I did, where we were eating up somebody's property and
Yeah,
eventually going to lose a
the corner of the
garage.
house, and he's got 4 feet before.
But to think about it, the meteorologists call it 100-year events. How we have 2 of them within a span of 4 years, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, they're critical to our infrastructure. They're critical to our stormwater management. They're not just, you know, streams that run through people's backyards. So we have a responsibility to manage it. And if you plug those brooks, you're going to see a lot of reasons why we would need to fix that in a hurry. Because it's not just the people's properties that are immediately abutting it, it's everybody downstream and land all around it that would erode or be damaged. So, you know, our roads, you know, Westbrook is an example, closed for a period of time while we did that culvert. Yeah, it's wide-ranging impact.
We talk about the town of Milford. As we have a little extra time, downtown always comes up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, for us, for these old people like me, you remember walking from school, going down to Grant's. They had their popcorn machine, and you could save your pennies and buy a bag of popcorn, but there was a life.
Right.
The downtowns in most American towns seem to be atrophying. Is there anything in your mind we can do to, should we breathe life, and if we want to, can we?
Well, the question is, can we convert more of those buildings to professional buildings, whether it be doctors, lawyers? Is there a potential for mixed use? Is there also other opportunities? When we look at, you know, the old Morcombe property and the speed shop, there's a new dental building there, so there's economic development. That pumps vitality into the Main Street. It's done an awful lot for that entire corner that was really falling by the wayside. So I think there's economic development opportunities. We just met with the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, Jay Ash, and we talked about the tools that were available. And one of the dynamics he spoke of, and it was a great point that he made. You know, he said, you know, 20 years ago, big box stores were putting Main Street out of business. Now the internet is putting big box stores out of business. So the question is, how do we adapt? And how do we adapt to disruptive technologies, whether it be, you know, cell phones and all the things we couldn't imagine 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or so, you know, what we talked about as an example in the last Board of Selectmen meeting is what type of economic development committee do we want to put together, breathe new life into IDC such that they get the information they need and then can present to us the results after benchmarking communities that have been somewhat successful. I think when you look at, you know, Hudson, Marlborough, and a few others, you look at some of their parking infrastructure, you look at some of the ways in which they've gone after businesses and aggressively marketed. They're looking at boutique businesses. They're looking at bakeries, breweries, new different types of restaurants and cuisine. There are ways in which you can do that. If I told you 10 years ago that the speed shop was going to have a beautiful dental building there, right? There's an example where the private sector sometimes takes care of that itself. I'm prepared, and I've said it at open meetings on tape, that I'm prepared to use anything within the toolbox, including TIFs, to incentivize. And I just had a meeting with the IDC, as an example, the Industrial Development Commission, talking and asking them to think big, to consider where we can incentivize, to go out and benchmark these other communities to see where they're successful, because that's really where you can learn.
I got to cut you off now as we're running downtown.
Downtown, yeah, downtown, I think there's a few things we've left on the table over the years. If you go back to the 2003 comprehensive plan that was developed, you know, parking was always targeted as a problem. There are some things that could have been done along the way, acquiring properties, which certainly takes money to increase our parking. Also would have enhanced some of the dynamics of the neighborhood, some of the properties bordering Central Street and those parking lots. There's been discussion, I think, since that comprehensive plan to allow mixed-use residential use in the downtown area, and that's had a lot of opposition in town, but I think we need to explore it. I think, well, I mean, I know we already have some downtown residential uses, top floor of Spallone's, the Turtle, some of those other buildings. But what you have to realize, if you allow it on if you're going to allow that as a new use, they have to meet all of today's building codes, fire protection codes, accessibility codes, most likely an elevator, depending on how many stories it is. So I think there's a lot of things from that comprehensive plan that were not acted on, and I think we need to review that comprehensive plan. That was part of the recommendation in that plan, was to do a more detailed review of their plan. And I think we need some higher level planning, and I think we need a vision for, how do we want to shape our community, and the community as a whole, but, especially the downtown and the more challenged neighborhoods. Do we want to do some overlay districts?
I got to stop you because
Fair enough.
I got to ask the question. John, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
I'll keep it short and simple. My business experience, my municipal experience, my elected experience, my commitment to this community, collaborating with others to make Milford a better place moving forward.
Bill, from Milford, why should we vote for you?
Yeah, I don't think I'm a new entity. I think I have the demonstrated ability to make hard decisions. I think I'm willing to make data-driven decisions that can work with FinCom. I've worked collaboratively with your group, worked collaboratively with people across Town Hall. We've gotten a lot of things done. If you look at the success in the time that I've been there, I think that speaks for itself.
As always, I thank you, not only for coming on the show, but for being part of that select few that not only talks about making Milford better, but stands up, gives time, energy, and makes Milford better. And to all of our loyal viewers, all 6 out there, I'll never ask you to vote for either candidate, but I'll beg you to vote. When April 4th comes, you need to get out there. You need to look at these 2 men and decide which one better represents you, and then cast your vote. So please vote. I thank you when you do. I'll thank you for thinking about it, and may tomorrow be a better day than today for all of us. May God bless. Good night, all. Thanks for joining.
Not too long since I've been home.